What's up, Growth Nation? Welcome back to Scale or Die, the show where we uncover proven growth strategies from CEOs and growth experts behind some of the world's fastest growing startups. I'm your host, Dave Rogenmoser, and today we've got a new friend. I feel like I always say it's a new friend, but you really are a new friend that
Yes.
met at SaaStr, I guess, about a month ago. We got Ed Fry, who has been working with, particularly in B2B SaaS, for the last 6 or 7 years here, across a couple different companies, was at Inbound.org, was at Hubspot, and most recently was the, head of growth, is what you say.
Yeah.
the head of growth at Whole, and now is working as a consultant with other B2B SaaS companies. Ed loves talking about data, underlying data, but then I think more importantly what we want to talk about today is kind of what can you do when you've got a good data strategy in place? What are some of the most cutting edge companies doing when they actually are able to sync up all their data, get rich customer profiles, and what's the power that comes from that? So Ed, welcome. I'm excited to kind of nerd out and talk about data and a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah, very excited to be here.
So before we kind of get, I guess, into like currently what you're working on and what you've been seeing here, you were at HubSpot, and before we started filming, you said kind of the consulting you're going to be doing is kind of a combination of what you were doing at HubSpot, but then also what you were doing at Whole. And I guess tell us, like, what were you doing at HubSpot? What did you kind of learn? What did you kind of pick up there as a marketer? How that kind of transitioned into Whole, and kind of where are you at today?
Sure. So when I was at Inbound, that started as a side project piece. So by Rand of Moz and Dharmesh at HubSpot. And although that was a side project for them, and we kind of kept that going, it was originally at his $500 a month for your time and $12,000 to last indefinitely, like manage this side thing.
Not really a job.
Yeah, no, so this was actually before university, before college.
Awesome.
About a month before first going to Bristol, I was doing this, which was great because that paid my beer budget through university. But about halfway through my time in university, we had this discussion when all three of us were together in Seattle in July 2013 for MozCon. This is going all right, but it needs either Moz or HubSpot or just more resource to go into it. And that wound up with HubSpot acquiring Inbound.org. And so that was great because we had all the resource of HubSpot put in, not just like the tools and tech, but also like the financials to it. And for me, that also gave eyes into the Big Orange company about a year before they were going public, and all the B2B SaaS playbook and everything which was put on there. But as we grew, particularly post that acquisition, acquisition for us was no longer really an issue. Like once we connected to this ecosystem, we had a bunch of members coming in.
What did you sell at Inbound.org?
So Inbound.org is a community for marketers, like a hack and use for marketers. You'd go there, be able to submit links, start, post questions, etc. When it started, it was mostly Rand's followings. It was mostly SEOs who knew each other talking about SEO. But if you look at the acquisition thing, which was coming in, particularly post-acquisition, meta acquisition, that value proposition really began to change. People didn't see people they recognized talking about subjects they recognized. And what this did for us is a big decrease in engagement, a big decrease in engagement, and ultimately, like our retention curve just began to drop off totally.
Because it used to be this like tight-knit, raving fans.
Yeah.
This is our crew.
Yeah,
and you guys sold out to the man.
You could say that, but also all your top-line metrics, your vanity metrics, begin to look amazing. But actually, the fundamentals behind the scene, you weren't actually joining up and delivering the same value as you were back in the day. And it became to the beginning of 2016 where this all came to a halt, and these charts were shown, and okay, we need to fundamentally change our strategy. So away from new users and away from like amount of content and this kind of thing, to focusing on weekly active users and what really drives that, and understanding how to pull together that kind of value proposition. And it was January 2016 where my journey really into like data and data strategy and how you can create better experiences, how you can do personalization, how you can get into this, how that really started. So one of the things
And did it start just out of, you just had to? Like you had to dig in and start figuring out how do we turn the ship around?
Exactly. It was not a sustainable situation. So
it wasn't like you were just looking to be all about data and loving data. You were like, I'm a marketer. I need to figure out how to turn this thing around.
It was a resource-eating thing which wasn't generating value in the same way. And so, it's a question like this is either going to be turned off or we need to figure the way out. So that really like starting to think through that set of problems. Like, how did people get value from this community? What were they doing? And this is very similar to SaaS companies. Like, how are people using your product? And all those answers aren't in your email tools. They aren't in the things which marketers traditionally have access to. They're in your backend database. So what we did is connected that backend database to our Hubspot portal so that we could really understand and take action on how people were using the platform, how people were engaging, how people were using the product, if you like. So me as a marketer, me as a community manager, I could then email people based on who they were, the actions they were taking, the time zone they were in, all that rich context, which I would know if I were face-to-face with them, but I wasn't able to join the dots otherwise. So by getting access to that data, I could suddenly start to pinpoint where the opportunities were. From there, we started to figure out, okay, where are the opportunities? So working backwards from what drives weekly active users, really it came down to a function of the number of discussions and the number of things which you could engage with each week. And that also tied it together with a number of contributors. So we had two very common types of interaction. One was like submitting an article link, and one was posting a discussion question. Discussions drove like 4 times the amount of engagement as posting an article. There was some like back and forth. So the strategy, okay, we're going to focus on discussions, on Q&A. We're going to try and seed as many questions as possible, get as many answers to that as possible. That was going to drive the number of contributors up, which was going to drive the number of weekly active users up. So how do we join the dots here? So we have a question. We weren't short of people asking questions in the community. That was great. But how do we find people to answer that stuff? Say, how do you put together a content strategy? Or like, I'm new, I'm the first hire in a B2B SaaS company. What should I do? These kinds of questions which a lot of people could answer, and with unique, interesting answers. So who are the types of people you could ask who can answer that question based on their skills, based on their recent engagement, based on their time zone, because you want to be able to wrap this up within a couple of hours, because you could think of over the course of a week, you'd have, the kind of 5 business days, but also over the day, you want to be able to drive engagement through the morning hours, but so being able to leverage like Europe and European members. So by the time the East Coast woke up, which is the key peak of the day, we'd have a thriving set of discussions and community activity. So by joining the dots there, so building this model where we could focus on, and then it came to how do we turn that model into a process which we could run with. So remember, we had all the insights in the backend database. We had this then put into HubSpot, where we were going to manage all this kind of stuff. So how do we systematically set up a system of emails to reach the people we wanted to answer those particular questions? And so we set that up, and that was a very manual process. Every single new question to go in and, from our pre-built set of segments, email those precise number of people.
So a question would come in, and then you would email people that could potentially answer it?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
And it would be like a plain text email, a Gmail type thing, something where, so I always find with anything that's kind of data-driven or based on like you're trying to personalize experience, try it manually, try it one-off, and then try and scale that experience. But for email, for asking a favor, you want to send that like as a Gmail thing. You want to send it written from like a person to another person, but then maybe just send that through an email marketing tool to many other people.
Yep.
That became the trick. That by sending those hyper-personalized emails, hey, so-and-so, like Gus is asked about who else is going to inbound this year. It's his first time. You've been a couple of times before. What would your advice be? Here's a link. Appreciate it if you could pop an answer in this afternoon. Those kind of emails drove 4 times the click rate, i.e. for every 10 emails we'd sent, we'd get 4 times the number of people actually back on the site than anything else we'd send. But it's only because we had all that context, all that to be able to join the dots there.
Did you see things start to change there pretty quickly?
Yes. So because of that growth model, which we hypothesized if we increase the number of contributors by focusing on Q&A, we'd increase the number of weekly active users, which drove the community metrics all in the right direction. The platform to become this valuable destination again. But despite having access to all the data, despite having this growth model, despite having this process, despite having all this set down, it was an incredibly manual process. We didn't get to a point where we could fully automate our way out of that. And so really this is where the kind of realization that, yes, you need to get all those steps. You need to know where to aim, how to leverage that data, but you then need to be able to turn it into a system of automation, a system of rules. And so the fastest growing startups and the fastest growing strategies we see with data tend to be around getting all those steps in order, but then be able to turn it into some kind of business rule, some kind of if this then that logic, something which is doesn't require manual intervention each and every time.
So if person has these traits, then do this thing.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever that kind of set of thing might be. Now, with customer data, that might be something like how to send an email, but systems of rules expand much larger than that. Something like pricing. Pricing affects every single customer. Pricing is an incredibly powerful rule within your system, within that system, within a company. Like the guys at ProfitWell ran a study comparing acquisition versus retention versus monetization, which is the most powerful set of levers. And they found, I have to remember the numbers exactly and how they measure it, but for a 1% increment in performance on acquisition, they would find a 4 to 8% increase with monetization, i.e. pricing is 4 times more effective than acquisition and twice as effective as working retention. I've 2 times in my career have we done like radical pricing experiments without like much care, like just doubling pricing and that just doubling revenue. Now, if you try and do the same thing with like acquisition, like you don't just double acquisition. It's just one of those business rules. It's something which can immediately deliver an impact versus how do you double search traffic, how you double social traffic, how do you double the amount of paid acquisition. Like it's a different kind of thing. And so you need to think about, okay, what are the rules? What are the systems fundamentally behind the growth, behind everything what you're working on?
So when you start working with these B2B startups that you've been either consulting with or working with, with Whole or wherever, where are people most stuck or getting it wrong or missing opportunities that you see and you come in and you say, hey, let's fix these things?
Yeah, so typically before you've got product market fit, you need to get that whole kind of set of problems sorted out. So after that, once you've got like first marketer in, you've got like leads are coming in, you have a method of doing that, you have a method of closing that general funnel doesn't look too bad. How do you scale from there? So people go and hire the best people they can find. They buy the best tools in the market. These are all very commonly well understood things, but the same amount of care and attention is not put into your data. And that becomes a drag on your teams and on your tools. Whereas the fastest growing companies think about their data on the same level. There's a hierarchy to it, like teams own tools, tools own data. And as teams buy more tools, like Proof, like email tools, like CRMs, whatever, to do the jobs they have to do in order to grow, this creates a system of silos. And unless you actually think how to join this up and how to leverage all that and how to build rules and build systems across that, it becomes a drag on the entire company. So
they're really only as good as the data that you have.
Exactly.
It really becomes frustrating as you have all these different tools, all these different audiences that you've rebuilt over and over. And like we did our daily huddle yesterday, and someone running our customer success is like, hey, can I get these like 2 events sent in? We're like, hey, who even knows where the events are? It's like, what are the names? And it's like this whole thing that it's just hard to do across teams.
Yep, exactly. So the companies aren't generally short of data or like adding tracking for those events. Like that's typically not the hard part. The hard part is how to make sense of it and pull it all together into a system which is accessible. You can derive the growth model, the growth equations behind it, and you can turn that into a process and turn that into business rules and like automation, so on and so forth.
So I guess that kind of leads you into Whole.
Yes.
And I guess why'd you join up there, and like what were you guys doing there at Whole?
So like I mentioned when back at Hubspot, the data-driven insights came from connecting our platform, our backend, our MySQL database to HubSpot, and being able to join the dots in that way. Not just like literal data, but also join the dots in our heads. Mm-hmm. Like, this behavior is enforcing this. That took a lot of engineering time. We so happen to have those engineers, but most companies don't.
But I found even when you have them, you still don't want to use them. It's like, I've got a bunch of engineers back there. I still don't want to talk to them if I don't have to.
Sure. So I'll get to that in a second. But so when I saw Hull, which had just pivoted to become this B2B customer data platform, this was going to provide the answer. It takes a lot of the effort away from engineering. It also empowers engineers. But this was going to be the future. Everyone needs to be able to join the dots. Everyone needs to be able to understand their customer journey. Everyone needs to be able to bring all their context to provide a better experience. So I joined there, again, as employee number one. We began to figure out, like, okay, who are we selling to? Is this, like, what kind of area of the market? We knew we wanted to be B2B. We knew we wanted to be mid-market-ish. But was this going to be very small, or is this going to be, like, the later stage? Is this selling to marketers or marketing ops or engineering, or I don't know.
Yep.
So it was kind of like customer development type stage. And we began to settle on a kind of a direction. And I think particularly 2018 onwards, we really settled on understanding the profile within these sorts of companies, how they structure their teams, to structure their data. And really the profile we see that's emerging most is a growth engineer. It is an engineering role which doesn't roll up to a CTO, which does not fall under product, which does not care so much about things like uptime and sprints and whatever, but rolls up under a COO, a CMO. They care about supporting sales and empowering marketing and setting all on that side. And the kinds of things they will be doing, data engineering, like sorting this data behind the scenes. It's a bit more like a DevOps type role for the marketing space, for the marketing stack, and pieces around that.
And is that a growth engineer, as opposed to maybe a growth marketer, maybe a semi-technical growth marketer?
Yeah.
Is it an engineer only because it's still too technical for a non-engineer to kind of run with that whole strategy?
Yeah, so you could say it's the ability to code or not, or things like that. I think there's quite a lot of tooling which enables you to just parameterize things. Like, you can get quite a long way with tools like Salesforce and Hubspot just by fiddling around with parameters. The key thing is really understanding how your data flows and what affects something else, and the impacts of various different things can have. Understanding how data flows and what data you need, that's the key piece there. And typically that involves, like, some more technical skills. Like, you should be able to write a SQL query. You should be able to maybe write some JavaScript, whatever, to manipulate stuff. But that's like more kind of the skill set. In terms of that profile, so that growth engineer might not be like a VP growth. It might not be a managerial type position. And so who then goes and buys these teams? Who organizes these projects? Might be like a VP marketing or VP demand gen or like VP growth that brings this kind of in, has a data engineer. But really the trend we're seeing in the fastest growing companies is that doesn't even sit with marketing or sales or CS or anything like that. It falls under ops. It falls under operations. So for better or worse, it goes through one service, and that becomes the source of truth, both in terms of tooling and data and team for everything else in the company.
Basically, there's operations that is saying, here's all the data that's true about our company.
Yeah.
Every team is free to consume it, and we're going to make that available and clean, but it's not marketing data. It's not product. It's just, here's the company data.
Yeah.
Everyone use it.
Yeah, and so that should then be propagated to your system of choice. So marketing might be using marketing automation tool, or their ads, or whatever, so that whenever they're using it, they've got the most complete, most accurate, most up-to-date data at any one time, and they don't have to worry about that. Like, that's someone else's job. Versus marketing having to try and hire a developer and try and manage this all themselves, and sales do the same, and CS and product and whatever. So every time a sales rep on a phone or looking in CRM, anytime you're putting together a campaign, anytime that you should have reliable, most complete, most accurate, most up-to-date data. And that tends to be how teams organize, not just in terms of tools, but also data, also how they structure themselves.
Same.
And then the growth engineers sit with that. Typically, as companies are growing, projects like data warehousing and BI and like all that kind of analysis comes in. And that's been something which has been around for a while, like tools like Tableau, etc. And what we're seeing teams building the business case for this is that resource already exists. Can we do this kind of data engineering to empower marketing? It's not just about pulling insights from like a Tableau dashboard, and that may be filtering through some reports at management level, and then eventually affecting change through some meeting. No, it's about the real-time sync with the tools that those teams are using.
So once companies kind of get some level of this set up, relatively clean, relatively consumable, what have you seen these like companies that are most cutting edge able to do with that?
Yeah. So B2B SaaS companies generally will fit into like one of two camps. So if you're very like low ACV, a lot of the automation around sales or like even cutting out sales. So like the freemium free trial, how do you optimize that? And on the other end, where you've got a much higher ACV, it's how do you focus those resources around an account. It's all about account-based marketing and account-based orchestration. So those are the kind of two big flavors.
Let's start with like the account-based marketing. Like, what have you seen?
Well, so there's a common set of things which ties all that together, which is, okay, how do you use and enable this data? Really, we kind of think of it in terms of a set of six questions. Like, who are you talking to? What are you trying to say? When are you trying to say it? Where are you trying to say it? And why? What's the kind of the reason to move them through the funnel? So, two, segmentation. That's rule is defined somewhere. What, which tends to be some like, what is the content? What is the messaging? But also, what is the templating? Again, it's defined by data. When, what's the trigger? Events, again, it's defined by data. Where, the tool, the channel, that's defined by data. And why? Where is this in the customer journey map? What is the experience through that? And the final piece of that is how. How are you going to really tie that all together? So when you're comparing like free trial optimization, it's those set of questions applied to, okay, you care about people within their free trial, the messaging which is going to move them forward, when, well, based on the actions they've just taken, where, well, probably a scalable channel like email, so a good email tool like Customer.io, et cetera, et cetera. ABM, it's the same story. You're just putting different answers to those types of questions, which means the kind of the data management is often pretty much the same. You're just working with slightly different sources and slightly different methods there. But the strategy is, and the questions you're asking are exactly the same.
Yeah, I've seen, I think I was on, or am on, the email list from Hull.
Yeah.
And after I got back from SaaS, you were sending out these emails, and they were all like personalized with all these different merge tags. And at the bottom, you'd kind of say, check out this link to like see the personalization, behind this.
Yeah.
What are the results of like those kinds of emails versus if you just sent out, just a regular email that's unpersonalized?
Yeah. So going back to what I was doing at Hubspot, sending those like personalized emails, I did a post on this, including showing the full numbers for the basically three types of emails we sent. So we had a normal newsletter, which wasn't really personalized at all. We had fake notification emails to try and bring people back, and we had these personalized emails. We found about 2.5% click rate, on just normal newsletter. So that's kind of a benchmark. About 5% on the fake notification emails, and 10%, i.e. 1 in 10 people will be back on the site that we email, which is pretty good when you send 250,000 of those.
That is not. Yeah, that is good.
So that's the kind of benchmark. If you think of like a really good SDR or the level of personalization they would want to put into sending something out to get a response, that's what you want to be aiming for with all your email, not just the email where you can put the resource in to put the time together. That's been kind of the answer to the question. So at Hull, because those emails are more like a newsletter style or like here's content to consume versus me asking for a specific, you to do a specific action. So we see about like 5%. So it's still twice as good as maybe the newsletters we had before, but we didn't send nearly the volume I did previously. But 5% of people coming back to the site is not too bad. Definite room for improvement there.
So I'm curious, I want to get some free consulting for proof here.
Sure.
Now, if you can think about us as an example, if you were to come in, for a month, knowing what you know about us, taking what you've seen out there, working with so many different companies, what would be like the tips or like the steps that you would want to put in place in order to help us kind of get to the next level as far as what data we have, what we're able to do with that in order to grow quicker and grow faster?
Sure.
Proof.
So I think there's two sides to it. One, in terms of getting your kind of data in order, setting everything up. If you're like a chef in the kitchen, get everything set up. And then two, what are the flavors of rules which we can then build off that? So in terms of getting your data in order, what is the data model which you want to build and represent across all your systems? Who is your ideal customer profile? How would you describe that? What's the data which you're going to need for that? Things like industry, job titles of people, and so on. What's the context of how those people have engaged with you? So based on their previous actions, what's life cycle stage, et cetera, how do you represent that across your whole system? What's your tracking plan? What's the so how are you building that whole kind of system of data to be tracked in? And once you've got all that, and you have that all standardized across your system, then we can talk about what kind of things we can start to optimize.
Here's a question for you. So, example, we're personalizing our marketing funnel based on different industries. It's kind of an initial starting point.
Yep.
We've got basically 4 different industries. We've got SaaS, e-commerce, agencies, like coaches, consultants, courses, and then other kind of has a separate bucket. What's hard is Clearbit doesn't have all of the exact things we need. So it's like, where do we get the right data to fit the buckets to actually have good marketing?
So to identify that ideal customer profile, to identify whether someone fits that or doesn't. So someone's already hitting the website, you've got you're capturing their email and you're sending that to Clearbit and getting that enrichment data back, but you're not getting the match rate. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of them, it's like, okay, Clearbit has a certain way that they describe things, but they don't have coaches, consultants, courses, maybe in the same definition that we have. Sure. Or we may call, I don't think they have like marketing agency as a tag. Maybe
there's some combinations of tags. Yeah, so there's frustration.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, or even as we've talked with other customers, we kind of help them think through like personalization strategy. It's like, we don't want to start with, okay, what data is available, and then build from there. We want to kind of say, okay, like given
what's the question you're trying to answer?
If every piece of data was available, what would we do? So there's a big gap there a lot of times.
So imagine if your entire website, if you think of your entire website as a form, and every interaction you can use for profiling. One of the things which we found kind of interesting is building out sets of landing pages, sets of around those types of topics, around those types of things. So for instance, the whole, what integrations do you have? So we would also use data enrichment services like Clearbit and personalize to identify this. But one, when that's not going to get everything. And two, we want to know what you're interested in right now. So by building out those sets of pages and understanding how you're clicking through the site, where you're landing from, what other kind of messages you're engaging with, helps to build that picture. So besides the enrichment data which is coming in, you have those kind of signals of intent, signals of interest around that stuff. But then also being like explicit, like asking people within the page, like what are you looking to integrate with Salesforce? And then rolling that data in. Then to keep all that clean and tidy and actually make sense, you then need to have a means of building what we call fallback strategies. So what of all the tools which you're interested from all these data sources, how do you prioritize which one is the most true? So that when you do your messaging with your sales guys reaching out, he's not got this like complete mess of data to work with. He's got like, here's just the two things which you need to be talking about.
You kind of weight different actions, kind of say, okay, because like, so even with the industry deal, we've kind of done that, you kind of tag different blog posts. Okay, if they've read 7 agency blog posts and 3 e-commerce blog posts, which one are they?
Yes, but then you get some level of intelligence.
It's like, how do you kind of weight that to say, is it the most recent one? Did they kind of switch from agency to e-commerce? Like, how do you kind of know that what you have is true?
Often the best thing is to leave that up to like the sales rep or leave it up to the person who's going to be managing that piece of campaign, but to have that summarized. Often systems in the past, like Salesforce, like Hubspot, were not built for this amount, like today's amount of data. And so they force you to do things like have one field for one thing and tidy things up in that way, or otherwise limit and constrain your view on that. Whereas modern tooling, you can have everything or have everything expanded and linked and referenced. So for instance, like what's the first page you looked at, what your interests there? What's the first campaign you came in versus the last campaign? This is a classic multi-touch, multi-channel attribution problem. You're really limited by like first touch, last touch, fields and that kind of thing. Rather, show me a summarized timeline of all the things that they've done, and then begin to deduce their story from there. If you don't have like a timeline or something like that to understand the context, how some people are moving through the cycle, then you're
a lot of times you're still kicking it to human intelligence to say, we're going to give you a concise summary.
Yes,
we're going to help condense it. You got to kind of make some decisions or maybe ask some questions there, but this is going to give you a huge head start.
Yes, and bring that all into their tool of choice, so they're not digging into Mixpanel, they're not digging into LinkedIn. They can stay focused in their tool of choice, but you are going to bring that complete summarized view, so they have everything there. Think like a like Air Force pilot, where they've got like the data coming into where they're at. Like that's what you're aiming for. And that's why you need that operationalized system in the middle. That's why you need to join the dots, if you like, on the back end.
Yeah. Very cool. This is fascinating stuff. And it's complex, but I think as it starts to make sense, you start to realize everything else just became so much more powerful.
Yes.
And even as we're like, personalizing sites, like, a piece of it is, the actual tooling to do this, whether it's email or on page or whatever. A piece of it, a bigger piece of it's probably the actual strategy. Like, do you have the strategy right? But then you're only as good as the data that you have available.
Yep.
If you don't have it, you're just stuck in the water.
And
or you're going to be optimizing like 1% of your emails or traffic or whatever. And it's like, this is cool. It makes a cool blog post. I didn't really make any more money here.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that's the hard part when it comes to doing this. Like, how do you do it in a way that actually moves key metrics?
So I think that comes from having access to the data, like understanding the customer life cycle, building a model, building an equation so you can describe, not in conjecture or opinion, but no, these are the key levers. Things like pricing, things like, I mean, for a lot of companies, it might be acquisition by which channel, or how do you convert X, Y, or Z people, and what's the key lever there? Things like segmentation. If you go and look at the conversion rates by industry, so you mentioned like looking at industry and what the spread of the different kinds of dimensions. Maybe industry is not the thing with the widest spread. Maybe people, there's a bigger difference in how people convert by, company size.
Yep.
And that bigger difference indicates one message is working far better, and you could probably even optimize and improve that, and you have the scope to have the others catch up. So where you can build a segmentation strategy based on where you've got the widest spread, those are the kind of things. But it starts with access. It starts with having that full picture.
Yeah, totally. All right, I want to hop into the Salty Six, but one last question before I do. I've just piqued your interest in the Salty Six.
Yeah.
But what are you excited about for the next few years of B2B SaaS? What trends are you watching? What shifts in the market, have you kind of seen? And like, what are you going to be personally watching and excited about?
I think I've been in the marketing to marketers about marketing for a long time, and the tech is getting particularly interesting. I think whilst there's like big roll-ups, there's also like more and more interesting new niche players and how they grow and the directions they go in. That's very cool, but it's what's the profile? Who owns that, and how is that role going to develop over time? So whoever figures that out and how to nurture and support that community and that group of people, I think that's going to be the most exciting thing, not just for the next 5 years, but the next 10, 50, 100 years. Like marketing, sales, it's not become less data-driven.
Yep.
Whoever owns that.
And who do you see doing that well right now?
I actually think it's a bit of a land grab. The thing about marketing to marketers about marketing, most of those companies are going for like a higher level or less technical audience because it's bigger.
Yeah.
But the influence the people who are operating at the data layer have is far, far larger. And so I think there's an outsized return in the companies who can figure that out. So I think that's the next gold rush.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally. Very cool. All right, Ed, the Salty Six rapid fire questions. For me to just get to know you a little bit better.
Okay,
some
very
about
good.
business, some outside of business.
Perfect.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
Number one, outside of breaking data silos, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? So I like to cook and I like to fly. I like to go see places like Austin. This is, those two things.
What's your favorite place in the world you've ever been? London?
Yeah, it's fun to go visit places, but it's that feeling of seeing the red, white, and blue tail and the cup of tea and the welcome back. Yeah, that's a good moment.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. Do you have a morning routine? And if so, what is it?
Oh boy. Yes, I do have a morning routine, but it's probably a little lazy and a lot of room for optimization. I'm definitely more a late night person than a morning person, to put it that way. But yeah.
Cool. How do you focus during the day?
How do I focus during the day? Turn things off. So for context, so Hull was in Paris and Atlanta, and I was the only person in London. I worked from an office, the company called Distilled, so I wouldn't be disturbed. You're surrounded by people, you need the buzz.
Yeah.
That's kind of ideal. So to turn things off, having recently left Hull, I've taken Slack off.
Oh, yeah, I saw you turn Slack off.
So that is amazing. That is literally like coming off like a whole bunch of addictive things all at once.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how addictive that kind of technology is.
What do you think it is? Just all the different notifications, like just
Always
every
got something.
channel.
Yes.
Whenever I'm slumping during the day, I just hop on Slack. It's like a little hit of.
Yeah, and because it's work, it feels okay. You wouldn't do the same on Facebook. You wouldn't do the same on Instagram. You wouldn't do the same.
I feel
on
like
things
I'm being a good team member.
Yes,
by like being addicted to Slack.
Exactly.
I'm just helping everyone out.
It doesn't have the negative feeling. So like, turn things off. Delete apps. So things like LinkedIn, delete it unless you're going to say to like a conference or something like that.
I don't think anybody's ever downloaded LinkedIn in the first place.
It can be useful for like messaging in around like a conference or something.
That's
but
true.
then to get rid of it. So delete stuff, less.
Cool. I like it. Okay, what's a book that has impacted you deeply in the last few years?
I actually could like start with why. I mean, it's not in the past few years, but like a little early on, because you need to understand. So the Simon Sinek talk and then reading the book. Everyone knows what they do. Some people know how they do it. Few people understand why. Doing the reverse. Much more reason to get up in the morning.
Okay, what's the best purchase you've made recently under $150?
So the best thing. So I do travel a little bit. And as a Brit, I'm very fond for my tea. You mentioned Earl Grey earlier. Actually, you can pick those things up for free in little airport lounges, but Earl Grey and British tea needs to be served with milk, of course. We're not savages. And so to bring proper milk, which comes in these little sachets, I say proper milk.
What's a sachet?
Just like a little
pouch.
Yeah. And so you can get these like individual portions of that, and it totally transforms the taste of tea. Couple of pounds, and it totally makes your day.
You bring those with you?
Yeah, I'll show you in a minute.
I love it. I can't wait.
That's probably the best happiness hack.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then finally, number 6. What's a trait or characteristic that you have that's led to your success today?
Trait or characteristic? I think like always asking why, and maybe not really letting go on that. I think possibly a bad habit, but like from like an early age having like pretty senior people to work with, and maybe not respect is probably the wrong word, but like seeing people kind of equal and
is that like
reason and whatever.
Is that curiosity, or is that skepticism, or is it just?
So curiosity, yes. Skepticism is like I want to believe, but help me understand why. Like that's searching. Whereas cynicism is something else. I'm not a cynic. But
skepticism is like I'd like to get there.
Healthy.
If you can help me get there.
And you like to have like a good working relationship with people where you can. Skepticism is a very healthy thing. You need to be able to have an exchange of difference. I don't do very well with hierarchy and top-down stuff.
You break in, say I'm here to ask questions.
Yeah. Forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Ed, this has been awesome, man. Thanks so much for geeking out with me over all things data. Thanks so much for watching Scale or Die. And Ed, if people want to find out more about you, see what you're doing in your next stage, your next venture, where can they find you?
Sure. So Twitter's good, @EdFryEd, and LinkedIn. You can also check out behindthegrowth.com for the next big move.
You got some good tweets. I'm a recent follower.
Yeah.
I've been following the Twitter.
Thank you.
I recommend it. Check it out.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.